Welcome back, everybody. Today, I'm just going to do a quick tournament report. Earlier today, I played in Jason Klaczynski's, I believe he called it a booster extravaganza, but essentially at the end of the month, he hosts a large RS to PK tournament, and he hands out a lot of really good prizes. Um, I think we had 32 players today, and I finished in the top four with this Arcanine deck. To be completely upfront with you, I really wasn't planning on playing after hosting that 2004 tournament yesterday. I was kind of Pokemoned out for the weekend, but Jason was awesome. Came out, supported me, supported my tournament, so I wanted to make sure and do the same for him. I I haven't played a lot of RS to PK lately. Um, I think it's a fun format to play, but at the same time, a lot of the top decks are essentially designed around not letting you play Pokemon. So it can be a very, I don't know. I guess I don't mind there being incredibly dominant decks. I'm completely fine with that, but I do think it takes some of the fun out of the game when most of the top tier decks are designed around not actually letting you play the game. And I could make a whole video on this, and maybe at some point I will, but I'm just going to leave it at that. So I really wasn't sure what to play. I thought Rayquaza, Stantler, Bombtar, and Dragtrode were probably the top three decks in the format. And this is my own problem, I haven't really played a whole lot of Bombtar, and I haven't really played a whole lot of Rayquaza, Stantler. Um, so I didn't really feel comfortable playing either one of those decks. And I played Dragtrode, but to be honest with you, I don't enjoy it a whole lot. And considering the fact that I was already Pokemoned out for the weekend, I didn't really want to have today feel like a grind. So I looked at what the meta was, and in theory, and despite some of my past performances with it, I thought Arcanine EX was a solid play. And what I mean by that is I've done really well with Arcanine in the weekly tournaments. I've won a handful of them with Arcanine. But I think in two of the RS to PK ones, end of the month, like the huge tournaments, I played Arcanine, and I've gone 0-2 at the last two of them, just hitting really rough matchups or really bad draws. So it's always kind of a double-edged sword for me. I had played around with some different lists, but I decided to switch things up a little bit. And I wish I could talk about how much of a great deck builder I am, but to be honest with you, I just went to Jason's blog, copied his Arcanine deck, and then changed a couple of cards I don't like on it. Um, the Swiss rounds were pretty straightforward. I went 4-1 in Swiss. I believe I beat an LBS deck, um, a Raichu Executor, um, gosh, what else? I lost to an LBS deck, but essentially I ended up going 4-1 in Swiss. Top eight, a Blaziken deck, a Blaziken and Rayquaza Pidgeot deck actually made top eight. I had two incredibly great games against it, narrowly winning out, mainly thanks to Houndoom and Cursed Stone. And then in the top four, I lost to another LBS deck. The first game I won basically based off of Houndoom, and then the second game I ended up losing it. I think I made a misplaying it. Kind of the key turn for it was essentially I had five prizes left. He had six. He was dead drawing through a lot of the game, but he was always just one card away from something being really good. And essentially, I knocked out one Squirtle, and he had a Squirtle active, and he paralyzes my Arcanine. I didn't have the Fire Energy, and I knew we didn't have a good hand, but I ended up Rockets adminning him anyways, thinking that I would go down to four prizes, and I could put so much pressure on him that I was going to win that game anyways. And um, at the end of it, though, it turned out not to be the right play. I figured both the Squirtles would be in the discard, and I knew it was an iffy play, but it just felt right at the time. But essentially, he drew really well off the admin, was able to get set up, and came back to win that game. The third game, I I just wasn't able to find a Cursed Stone. If I was able to find a Cursed Stone a couple of turns earlier, I think I had a shot in it. but it was 3 really good games. He ended up winning the tournament, so congrats to him. But I'm just going to do a quick rundown on the deck. The selling factor for me was Houndoom. Most of the things that annoy me in this format, Houndoom stops. So I thought that was going to be a really good addition to the deck. And like I said, this is a little bit different than when I played in the past. Typically, I just go a very aggressive Arcanine deck, playing the Hoenn engine. And my line of thinking is I'm just going to put a ton of pressure on the opponent. And then I have to play the Lunatone Solrock combo over the Houndoom, or I'll play a very thin Houndoom line. Thinking that just shutting off Pidgeot along with Cursed Stone is the right approach. This one is a little bit different, where essentially you don't play as heavy on some of the stadiums and you just try to lock one of them in. I'm going to say after playing this deck, I actually do like the Houndoom variation a lot. But at the same time, too, the 2-2-1 split on the stadiums felt a little weird. So the 4-4 Arcanine was great. The 2-2 Houndoom was great. The Ambipom, I love, or not Ambipom, Apom. I absolutely loved the Apom. I thought that was fantastic in the deck. Really, really, really like that. And that's something I couldn't normally play with because I usually play the Lunatone Solrock combo, so I'm not allowed to play the Apom. But that was really good. The Hoenn's Electrode was okay, but it felt almost like overkill. I know the reason that Jason ran it is because he plays the Four Elms training method. So outside of grabbing Arcanine or Houndoom, you can actually grab an energy card with the Professor Elms training method, which makes sense. In the supporter lineup, 4 Elms was good, 4 Admin was good. The 4 ER2 was good, but I could see playing something else in those spots. And I'm not entirely sure what that is, but I could see playing something over them. Like I could see a Pokemon Reversal could be really good. I could see just playing more tech cards. Like I could even see playing like the Lunatone Solrock combo along with the heavy Houndoom. Like go something like a 4th Great Ball, like a Lunatone Solrock, and then maybe like a 3rd Warp Point, and just going a little less techy. And then the idea being you don't drop the Lunatone Solrock combo against a majority of the decks. I don't know. The 3 Great Ball played really, really well because obviously you play him to grab your Growlithe or your Houndour, but at the exact same time too, it always felt like a live card with Apom in the deck. So at worst, you almost always just 1-for-1 with it. It was kind of like a Pokédraw, I guess Upstart Goblin, that's Yu-Gi-Oh, but something along those lines where it was just a single 1-for-1. It felt really good. I have to play 3 copies of Stevens because a lot of players will just fill their bench in this format. The one mistake that I made, and this was a pretty bad one on my part, and just shows that I didn't do any testing with the deck, but I forgot that I didn't take into consideration how much opponents would try to play around Houndoom. So, well, if I'm playing a deck like Arcanine without Houndoom, my opponent's just going to fill their bench really, really quickly. But if I'm playing a deck with Houndoom, a lot of the times my opponent is going to try to keep their bench size really, really, really small. So I would say typically I still would net 3 cards from it. So it would be like the same as a Mayor's Request. But I did find that I would have situations where maybe my hand was just a little too full. I don't think, in hindsight, I don't think I'd play 3 Stevens. Copycat always performed very well for me. So I could see myself upping the Copycat count. I could see myself upping the Mayor's Request count. And I could also see myself playing something like a VS Seeker. Just because we run so many different kinds of supporters in the deck, I could see VS Seeker being really good in this. 2 Warp Point played okay. I didn't really notice it throughout the day, but then again, I wasn't really playing matchups. I actually dodged most of the POW matchups. Like I didn't have to play against any Rayquaza decks or anything like that. So while the Warp Point's really, really good in theory, and especially against those decks, it just didn't really come into play today. The Stadiums is something I was not a fan of. The 2-2-1 split really didn't feel that good. Just because, like, I don't know. There was a couple of times, especially against the Blastoise decks, where I needed to find Cursed Stone much, much, much quicker than what I did. And I don't know. Cursed Stone, in my opinion, was just the best stadium in there. And I think to do it over again, I'd go 3 stone, 2 beach, or 4 stone, 1 beach, just because of how powerful that Cursed Stone is and how you need to find it quickly and early. And I understand the concept is you play Houndoom, then your opponent's not replacing it, so it doesn't really matter, and it's better to have the diversity in there. But yeah, it's just there was a couple times where I think I would have won that Blastoise matchup if I would have been able to stick a Cursed Stone much earlier and much more frequently. And the other thing, and this is probably a credit to Jason's list and maybe a knock against mine, is Jason opted to play 3 Scott in his deck, and that just seemed really bad to me. Not bad, but it seemed like overkill. So I was like, I wanted 2 Scott, but I ultimately just ended up dropping it down to 1. So I played the 1 Scott. If you were playing 3 Scott, maybe that stadiums would play a little bit better. But yeah, I definitely would play at least 3 Cursed Stone. The Battle Frontier, I get it. I get where it's good. You want to be able to, hey, I counter Pidgeot. Dragtrode's another one you want to be able to counter. But at the exact same time, too, I almost feel like in a lot of those matchups, you want to try to put a ton of early pressure on the opponent. And essentially, like, if my opponent put a Pidgeot into play, I would just put 20 on it. I'd just start piling those 20 damage on it right away. And even if they had a Pidgeot, and I was able to say, let's play it, put 2 or 3 overruns on it, yeah, they're going to get a couple turns of Quick Search, but essentially that Pidgeot is just going to die to the Cursed Stone. And I understand you could debate a lot of what I just said and have some really good discussions on it. Just the one of Battle Frontier really never came through for me, and I definitely felt like in the 2 games that I did lose with this deck, I went 5-2, I think, overall. 6-2 if you count the individual top 8 games. 7-2 if you count individual top 8 games. But yeah, the 2 games I did lose, it felt due to not hitting a Cursed Stone quickly enough, early enough. And then lastly, the energy there, 12 fire, 4 react. Playing 16 energy felt really good. And then the Holen's Electrode, while I was not a huge fan of it, just basically playing quote-unquote 17 energy just felt so good for the deck. I never felt energy dry. I had maybe 1 or 2 times throughout the tournament where I just drew into a hand that was just like, I'd copycat and I drew like 6 energy or something. And I get those hands are going to happen, but no, it felt really good throughout the tournament. It played really well. So I guess if I was going to play the deck, I'd definitely play around with it a little bit more. I think I'd definitely probably go with 3-2 or 4-1 on the Cursed Stone, Crystal Beach. And then I think I'd really have to look at the stadium counts. I just don't know how I would play it, but I would love a second Scott. I would love a 3rd Copycat. Probably do something with the Stevens Mary count, swap those around maybe. Maybe a VS Seeker, maybe a Great Ball. Maybe the ER2s could get dropped. I don't know. There's a lot of things I'd have to think about a little bit. Play around with tests, but no, the deck was great. Like I said, I got this list from Jason Klaczynski's blog. I'll make sure to link it down in the description down below. But I'm going to cut the video off there. Like I said, I just wanted to keep this a nice quick tournament report, show a list I did well with. Any questions or comments, post them down below.